post while we're there, and we started talking about what animes I've seen. I'm like, oh, I've seen this and this. You know, I was able to say, oh, this is what it is in the actual Japanese words and stuff. And I'm like, I'll have to describe you the characters. But she was kind of surprised, like, oh, you've seen that, you've seen that, and so she was kind of surprised at what we do have. Because it is a growing market. It's only getting better because companies are starting to see, oh, wait, we can get money.
Do you know, I mean, I don't know this off the top of my head, it's kind of actually why I'm asking, do you know the revenue dollars you're looking at? Would it be compared to something like the cinema industry here, or are we talking more comparable to, like, you know, you guys were making the parallel to the comic book industry? Like, what are the actual revenue dollars of the anime and manga combined? I mean,
well, I don't know the actual revenue dollars off the top of my head, but I'm sure that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure that the cinema industry is more or less comparable on either end, the USA or Japan. And the, sorry.
Oh, no, it's hot.
Sound like, you look like you were waving me over here or something. Say something. But I do think that in Japan, the anime industry is pretty much comparable to the comics industry here. And just like there's a subset fan base for anime here in America, there is actually a subset fan base in Japan for American comics, DC and Marvel. So there's kind of quite a bit of a crossing.
Which I'm sure it's not as big as the other on that side.
Yeah, X-Men probably isn't as big in Japan as it would be here.
no, I think she was referring to X-Men over there isn't as big there as, say, any mainstream anime would be over here.
Yeah.
Is what he was trying to say.
Oh, you mean comparable?
They match in a sense. Like here, we have Hastings and two other shops that sell anime and manga, while you go down the street and be like, oh cool, I want this comic book.
Well, and like at convenience stores, that's where they sell a lot of the anthologies, like the monthly anthologies that you can buy.
And of course, the closer you get to the Pacific, like in Seattle, Vancouver, BC, Portland, well, basically anywhere on the coast, but especially Seattle and Vancouver, BC, which are kind of the closest places in North America to Japan. That's where you have most of the anime and manga you can buy there. I think also in New York. New York's pretty much a popular Japanese destination. Then why?
Well, those are.
New York. There wasn't much.
Well, those are also big immigration sites.
Yeah.
Like New York is obviously a very big immigration site, like back in the early 1900s, and then with Seattle, with that area, like there used to be a huge Japanese population in Spokane because it was right outside the border for collecting for camps during World War II, where they collected Japanese families because they thought they were spies.
They also
That's why the Japanese came to Spokane, and that's why there's such a huge population in that Seattle area, because historically that's where they were all gathered.
In like an internment.
Also,
Yeah.
too, I believe most shipping, like the big shipping crates over from Japan, Korea, and China, I believe usually make port in either Seattle or anywhere in the Puget Sound or possibly Oregon. So that's where a lot of that, it's going to be centralized, and you will get some down in Los Angeles, but not as much. But then you're also talking about earlier, the comment was made about New York, just because it's such a popular tourist destination. But then you're just talking cultural epicenters. Because anywhere you have more people and more of a melting pot, you're going to get more of a
And that's more tiny down numbers and not percentages. There could be a million there, and that
Well, I
doesn't
mean,
mean
really, look
anything
at
if a million
Spokane.
people live
The
there.
demographic for Idaho is like 98% white in the whole state.
Trust me, I know
Yeah.
that with most calls. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you have
There's a reason for that one.
when you're in an area that also has such a limited demographic like that, you're not going to get a lot of extra cultures melting in.
No.
You know.
It'll be a while.
So you're really going to see it in the bigger places where you have a wider variety of ethnicities and cultures that come together.
Yeah, because here we're not quite Idaho, but we're pretty well close.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone here who hasn't weighed in? All right. Well, let me go ahead and move on to. Sorry.
Was
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and move on from there to the state of the fan base in anime now as versus what was. Well, first of all, how many people actually knew about anime even before there was a Cartoon Network? Or before Toonami or things like that?
I don't think I'm old enough for that.
Yeah, for me it existed then, but that's not how I got into anime because I didn't have
Yeah,
cable.
because Sailor
Does that
Moon was
count?
on the air when I was 3, so.
As I never got into anime via TV, but Cartoon Network and all that existed at the time.
Who was into anime by the mid-90s? Let's put it that way. No, who started getting interested by the mid-90s?
Well, I would watch like Pokemon and Digimon and stuff, but I didn't actually know that it was anime. I thought it was.
Well, I mean, that's what I mean. For example, I'll give you an example. I'll give you myself as an example. I mean, I remember, well, I guess I'm probably the oldest one here. I'm 35, but I remember when, you know, of course, I remember watching the Saturday morning cartoons. You know, that was back before you had all the video games and distractions and things like that, where you basically watch Saturday morning cartoons or the weekday afternoon cartoons after school, and then you'd go outside and play and do whatever. But then I also, once I graduated high school, still had a little sister that was 3 years old. So I was the one in charge of taking care of her, and I basically spent the day watching Nick Jr. shows and things like that. And I remember things like, anyone ever heard of the Grimm's Fairy Tales that used to be on there?
I've heard of it. That's about it.
And little bits and things like that. I remember those types of shows grabbing me because those were actually anime shows that were, well, they were basically cartoons in the cartoon block, but they were actual anime shows. So I remember grabbing me then. I didn't know it was anime. I didn't really know it was from Japan, but I know that was something that the artwork of it grabbed me. And once this was about 1992, 93 or so, and also I then saw who actually heard of Matthew Sweet, the singer who made, well, basically Matthew Sweet was an alternative rocker in the early 90s who made a couple of music videos that had anime in them. One of them was a music video that contained Glum as video footage from Glum, as well as the guy singing and the band. Another one was a music video from Space Commander Cobra and so on and so forth. So that's where I first heard it. But still, that's where I found out that that type of animation was from Japan. And same when I watched Vampire D for the first time. That's when I found out that it was from Japan, and it still looked like a lot of the cartoons that were on Nickelodeon, except not as kid-friendly. I'm talking about the original Vampire D, not the Bloodlust movie. But in any event, I'm guessing since no one here actually, who remembers watching Voltron at least on TV, the Star Blazers?
Was that the guy who looked like a cat and they're like, Voltron,
That
Mega
was,
scene.
Voltron was actually a
Click.
Yeah. Voltron was actually a combination of two different animes that they had to combine together because animes don't last as long as American TV shows. They usually like it to last 2 or 3 seasons or a full year or 2. So there was the one with the lions that combined together that was on either Earth or a planet. And then there was one that was out in the space station with another robot that combined together with certain parts. So, but that was the show. I forgot the name of the 2 shows it was a combination of.
Robotech was a combination of SDF Lacrosse and some other stuff.
Yeah,
Because
no.
Liberty Gold messed up the license.
Yeah, I remember Robotech was Lacrosse and I forgot the other.
It was something else. that I don't
Something else that wasn't really quite as popular. And to make things even worse, ever heard of the movie or OVA series Megazone 2-3?
Heard of it.
They actually released a movie called Robotech the Movie, where they basically took scenes from Robotech and mashed scenes from Megazone 2-3 in there, and just said, okay, we'll call it good.